You are listening to The Reference Desk, the Wicomico Library's podcast that connects you to your public library. Welcome to The Reference Desk podcast with Wicomico County Libraries. It's the podcast that connects you to your local library. My name is Vicki.
And I'm Amy,
the co-host, and this month we have, of course, a theme of what's on the table. Today we're going to be talking about recipes that you just can't do Thanksgiving without. Thanksgiving's right around the corner, and food is foremost on our minds. All the yummy traditional food that we associate with the holiday, like turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, and the like, they're standard. But I'd like to talk about different and sometimes one-of-a-kind recipes that can find their way onto our groaning tables at that most abundant of holidays. Thanksgiving, as we celebrate it, is an American tradition going back to 1941, when President Roosevelt, I believe that would be the Franklin Delano guy, not the Theodore teddy bear guy, signed the resolution declaring the fourth Thursday in November would be a national holiday. Collectively, Thanksgiving is a time to be grateful for all the good things that have happened over the previous year, with a good spread of food being the focal point, and family, by blood or by choice, present to celebrate together. Naturally, in the era of COVID, we encourage safe gathering. This month, we presented people in our community with the question, what is one dish that you couldn't celebrate Thanksgiving without? This could be anything from a recipe handed down generations or a really great way to make a traditional dish that you found on Pinterest during the lockdown in 2020. Dessert, turkey, side dish, you name it. If it's a dish that you absolutely have to have for it to feel like a true Thanksgiving, we want to know and share. And of course, if you were listening to this podcast and would like to add a comment with either a link to a recipe or a recipe itself, we would love to have that kind of feedback because it's really great to share those things. So we asked a few patrons about this, and one family, I'm going to give them a shout out, the Hints. They are a family that their kids volunteer here at the library, and they also are huge supporters, and they check out lots and lots of stuff, which we appreciate. They actually sent me 3 different recipes, and this family has some dietary restrictions, so their recipes are all vegan and gluten-free, because those are the restrictions they have as a family. So I'm going to go over those recipes and give them a little shout out, because these all look really, really good too. The first one they sent was vegan, gluten-free broccoli cheese casserole. And don't let that scare you, because it actually sounds really, really good. You had me at cheese. The ingredients are 3 packages, 10 ounces each, of frozen chopped broccoli, thawed and drained. If you'd like to do 30 ounces of fresh broccoli, that's of course your call. 1 package, or 7.1 ounces, of vegan cheddar shreds. They use Daiya, which is a brand, D-A-I-Y-A. It's a vegan cheese brand, cheddar-style shreds. They also use a 1/4 cup of melted gluten-free vegan butter. I honestly didn't realize butter had gluten in it, to be fair, until I read this. I was like, oh yeah. And they use Miyoko's European-style culture vegan butter. And there are some specialty stores around here where you can find it, like Acme usually has those things. And then they also use a box of gluten-free plain or salt variety crackers. They use Mary's Gone crackers, real thin crackers, sea salt flavor. I guess the brand is Mary's Gone, M-A-R-Y''S. So their instructions go as follows. Preheat the oven to 350. Always remember to preheat your oven before you start, or else you're waiting around forever, because it always takes forever when you're waiting. Remove the bag of crackers from the box and crush them with hands into small pieces. This is very therapeutic. In a large bowl, mix broccoli, cheese, and half of the crushed crackers together. You spoon the mixture into a 2-quart baking dish, and you mix the remaining crackers and melted butter, and you sprinkle it over the broccoli mixture. And I'm making a hand symbol, like a hand sign, like spreading it, like you can see me, but you can't. And then you bake 45 minutes, or until heated through, and you serve warm. The next one they sent was a vegan, gluten-free spice cake with walnut cream cheese icing, and I am here for this, because any dessert's a good thing, and spice cakes are fabulous. Okay. So the ingredients, 2 flax eggs. Do you know what they are? Flax eggs? Explain flax eggs for the listeners, because I can't do it justice.
Oh, flaxseed has that, it's almost like where eggs are sort of like that protein glue for a lot of recipes they bind. So flax naturally does the same thing. It's kind of like alfalfa does naturally the same thing as meringues with the eggs. So it's just more like a chemical reaction. So
how would you do 2 flax eggs?
Usually it's a powdered. You can use flax eggs, but you can get like an egg replacer that's usually made from flaxseed, and then you just do like a tablespoon for a certain amount of water for a certain amount of eggs. They'll tell you on the box.
Okay.
And then you just kind of slurry it all together, let it sit for a second, and then you can use it just like you would eggs.
Cool. And of course, if you don't have the dietary restrictions, you can probably use 2 regular eggs too if that's your jam and it's too much trouble to do all the math. They also call for 1/3 of a cup of coconut oil, and you can substitute vegan butter if you like, melted. They also call for 1/3 a cup of almond milk, and you can substitute coconut or oat milk as well. That's warm to the touch, so just shy of cold. So room temperature, a little warmer than room temperature. A teaspoon of gluten-free vanilla extract. Again, I didn't even know they had gluten in it. So many things. When you have a family that has a gluten allergy, you realize so many things have gluten.
It's labels.
Everything.
And then some research on top of that. You have to be so careful.
They hide them in there, yeah. 2 cups of gluten-free all-purpose flour. They use Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 gluten-free baking flour, which you can find at Acme, and I think sometimes Food Lion has it too, maybe even Walmart. I haven't checked. 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar or coconut sugar, 3/4 cup granulated sugar, a teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1.5 teaspoons ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon allspice, 1 batch of gluten-free vegan cream cheese icing, which of course they'll go through later in the recipe, and 1 cup of walnuts crushed. The instructions go as follows. Prepare the flax eggs. Oh, she actually tells you how. Prepare the flax eggs by combining 2 tablespoons ground flaxseed with 4 tablespoons warm water in a small bowl. Whisk and set aside for 10 minutes. Then, of course, the important preheat your oven to 350. Grease 2 8-inch round cake pans with coconut oil or coconut cooking spray. Combine flax eggs, sugar, vanilla extract, coconut oil, and almond milk in a medium-sized bowl and whisk. And in another bowl, sift together flour, salt, baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, and allspice. Add the dry mixture to the wet and mix 2 minutes on medium speed in an electric blender or electric mixer, or you can just use your arm.
Get some exercise before carb loading.
Build up your, yes, exactly. You can do that by hand if you like, just until it's completely incorporated. Pour the mixture into both cake pans, evenly of course. Bake at 350 for 35 to 40 minutes or until golden brown on edges and a toothpick comes out clean, which is the ubiquitous, like that's how you know things are done. Put a stick in it, and if it has goo on it, keep it in the oven. That's what I was always taught anyway. Allow to cool completely before removing from pan. Remove cakes from pan and ice between layers on top with gluten-free vegan cream cheese icing. You can probably buy it in specialty stores. Sprinkle crushed walnuts on top. Keep in fridge until ready to serve, or icing will melt. And I can tell you that from experience. I've made a vegan icing and it did melt. Remember the D20 cake I made that one time? The icing went everywhere. It was delicious, just didn't keep it room temperature. Warming the milk will keep the coconut oil. This is like a little hint thing they did. Warming the milk keeps the coconut oil from congealing in the mixture. So that's why you had to have the coconut milk warm, the almond milk, because the coconut oil tends to want to solidify at room temperature. So they say keep it a little warm so you can keep it from congealing in the thing. And so the gluten-free vegan cream cheese icing recipe goes with 2 tablespoons of vegan butter, softened, 2 cups of sifted gluten-free powdered sugar, 1 tablespoon of aquafaba, which is the leftover water from chickpea cans, and 1 tablespoon vanilla extract, and 1/4 teaspoon cream of tartar. This is a structure agent. This actually helps keep the meringue. You're basically making a meringue from collapsing. It's optional, but not really optional. It's one of those, if you don't have it, you can, but it makes it a little trickier. They'll also call for a dash of salt and a teaspoon of almond milk, just to soften it up a little bit. So the directions are for the aquafaba, of course, like I said, you use the liquid drained off of a can of garbanzo beans, put them aside, and use them in salads and stuff. They're delicious. You combine the sugar and the butter in a bowl. You add the remaining ingredients and beat until smooth for about 3 to 5 minutes. If it's too thick, add another teaspoon of milk. If it's too thin, add a teaspoon of powdered sugar. So you go back and forth until you have the entire bowl filled, because that's how it runs with me. Where you're adding a little bit of water to make it thinner, then it's too thin, so you lower sugar to make it too thicker.
It's a process.
It is, and you got to be careful. That's why small amounts is good, because otherwise you end up with a gallon of icing that you have to eat.
It's a terrible thing.
A terrible, terrible thing. So that is from the hints. The next portion of our program will actually be an in-person interview that we conducted with one of our employees at the library, Aurelio, who is our grant coordinator at the Paul S. Sarbanes branch. He's going to talk about his recipe for his family that you just can't do Thanksgiving without.
All right. Well, thank you first for having me. This is a fantastic opportunity. I don't know that I'm known and loved, but I'm certainly happy to be here anyways. So you'd think with a name like Aurelio, maybe I would bring like some sort of Italian traditions or something like that to Thanksgiving. And my dad's side of the family, that's kind of true. They do this mixture of Italian and kind of traditional American food for Thanksgiving. But in my family, Thanksgiving was prepared by my mother and often also my grandmother. So them not being Italian, that wasn't our Thanksgiving at all. So the one that always sticks in my head, and it's one of those recipes that's just so quintessentially American, is chicken and dumplings, which has been interesting for me because as I've gotten older and as I've kind of moved around the country and interacted with different people, I've realized that everybody seems to have a different take on chicken and dumplings.
Quick question, are you a flat, slippery dumpling or a puffy dumpling?
Definitely flat, slippery dumpling.
Excellent.
But not the like, I know certain people that their idea of chicken and dumplings is almost like chicken and noodles. And like, that's too thin. That's too slippery. Like, no, it's got to be, I think ours are about like maybe a third of an inch thick or something like that.
Do you make them from scratch?
I do.
Ooh,
yes.
Fancy. I get the frozen ones in the red box.
Oh, well, so that's part of the contention in the family. So it's interesting, and it's one of those kind of like traditional family recipes in the sense that, you know, grandmother never actually had a recipe, and who knows where she got her own recipe from, probably her mother, and so on and so forth, and it goes back generations.
And there's no measurements.
No, and
it's
that's
a dash
exactly
of this, a scoop of that, and you just guess. You measure that with your heart.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, and it's very much that. So when I was growing up, you know, I was very much the assistant in the kitchen, but I was never the, like, sous chef. I was just the kind of, like, prep assistant kind of person. So my brother, my mother, they were more of, like, the sous chefs to my grandmother. They're the ones who are, like, the keeper of the recipes.
You were the dishwasher.
Yeah, kind of. But so the problem is that because there are no recipes, when I asked them as an adult, like, hey, I really like this recipe, they're like, well, she kind of did this, she kind of did that, and that's how they make it. And over time, you know, everybody's kind of put their own spin on it in the family. Like you mentioned, the frozen ones, that has become a thing within the overall family.
Our
like
fist
some
flying.
people, they're like, oh yeah, the frozen ones, just do those. You don't need to make them. And I'm like, no, that's not how she made them. I'm doing it the traditional way. And I'm like, okay, so what is the like closest idea? So you know, I got the closest approximation of a recipe, which is, you know, the simplest thing in the world: flour, water, eggs, a little bit of salt. You know, you just got to get the measurements right, which I've kind of played around with over the years. And but the other twist on this one is that I'm a vegetarian. So
okay.
the chicken part is a little more challenging.
It is a little challenging. What do you do?
So what I have found that I've been using is I've got like this no chicken broth or like a bouillon that I use to make a broth. So it provides that very chickeny flavor. And then I have this kind of fake chicken that I've found. It's really similar to like a seitan.
Is it like tempeh or something?
No, it's more of it's like a
seitan?
seitan.
Okay,
like,
so it's wheat-based.
It's very, and I don't know if it's like 100% you know, gluten or if there's some other stuff mixed in or whatever. But it has a nice like stringy texture that captures that stringiness of, you know, shredded chicken.
Yeah. No.
And so I have taken to using that and kind of just boiling the whole thing in there together, and it comes out pretty tasty. I don't know that it's my grandmother's, but we've made so many approximations and changes and so on over the years that, you know, what's going to perfectly capture that?
Exactly. And I think one of the things that about recipes for Thanksgiving especially, but in general, is especially if you have family recipes, a lot of times they have evolved over the years. I know there are things that, like, I got a recipe from my great-grandmother, and I'm like, I can't use lard. For one, it's hard to find. And second, Crisco with a little bit of salt works just fine. And it's a little better for your heart and available in the grocery store. You can find lard. It's just difficult.
Yeah. No, those family recipes are amazing. I was talking to my friend about some of his family recipes, and he's like a folklorist, so he's serious about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he's got like captures of all of his kind of family recipes. And I love one of the recipes he shared with me. It was about their tamale recipe, and it was the amount of, I can't remember what particular ingredient it was, but they needed 3.5 of Mama's fingers worth of this one ingredient. And I'm like, 3.5.
Can I just borrow your hand real quick?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine passing that down as a family?
Exactly.
It's a little weird. But some things like that, because like someone will make it the matriarch of the family. And it really does come down to those matriarchal societies of old before current things happened. But yeah, you'd have the matriarch would make things and she would guard it so secret because she liked that. Like, I'm the only person that can make your comfort food because I make you happy. So yeah, it's really kind of cool to look at the etymology and the origin of those kind of recipes. And that's really cool that you managed to take your grandmother's chicken and dumpling recipe and make it something that you can eat with your morals and makes you feel good and comforted, and you still get that comfort. Do you put vegetables in it?
I don't. No. I'm not one of those.
Oh, okay,
no,
so we're a carrot and celery in there.
Ah.
I like to sneak in vegetables when I can because I have children and a husband that refuses to eat vegetables.
Just vegetables on the side. Now, wait,
That's
so
fair.
with yours, mashed potatoes or no mashed potatoes?
If you have dumplings, you don't need potatoes.
Oh,
That
no.
should start-
Okay, so no.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is
Oh,
another,
yeah.
this is what, and yeah, so, and I've talked to people about this, about these kind of regional different traditions, and yeah, we're very much a mashed potatoes, so like.
Oh, so at Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Okay, so
oh,
you
no.
gotta-
No, mashed potatoes with the chicken and dumplings on top of them. Almost like the chicken and dumplings are serving as this, like, ultra-rich gravy or something, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It is a thing, yeah.
I'm willing to try that, but I'm also going to have to make sure I carve out about 4 hours afterwards for that carb coma.
Yeah.
That will surely follow.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's fantastic. But yeah, it's, again, one of those things. I've talked to other people that are like, oh, in this region of America, they put the mashed potatoes on top. And I'm like, no, why would you ever do
Just
that?
stick to the
That's
bottom.
absurd.
Yeah,
No.
and that's so funny how things are so ingrained in our regional culture, and especially around the Eastern Shore. I know you're not from around here, right?
I'm not.
So you may encounter different recipes around here that you are like, where did that come from? Well, Aurelia, thank you so much for making time to come down here and up here and record with us. We really appreciate your input, and I hope that you guys will stick around for the rest of the podcast. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to Aurelio, and he had a lot of really great input. The mashed potatoes under the dumplings, that was fun. So
I found that when I became vegetarian, then vegan for a while, it's like you take your traditional dishes and try to change them so they fit into your new lifestyle.
veganify them.
Yeah, and luckily there's a lot more options that make it easier
Mm-hmm.
instead of back in the day. But because vegan cheese, that's amazing.
Oh yeah, and it melts so nicely too.
Yeah. So I didn't become vegetarian until I became an adult, but even when I was a kid, it was all about the sides for me because while my brothers went crazy for the turkey, it was never a thing for me. But my mom's side dishes were always the best. So from my family, and I'll put the recipes in the below, so there's going to be like a mini cookbook at the bottom of the YouTube video.
There will be, yeah.
So definitely check that out. But she would do this pineapple bread pudding that is sort of like, it's made with mostly bread, butter, and pineapple.
You can't go wrong with that.
Right. So it's kind of like what we would consider a stuffing. So it's not too like English bread pudding, but it's definitely a nice little twist instead of regular stuffing. And that was my favorite growing up. I would always beg to have it for Thanksgiving and Christmas, actually. And then as we got older, my mom found this great recipe, and it's basically drunken collard greens. So she would leave the meat out. So she would sub the chicken broth with vegetable broth, and she wouldn't put the bacon in. But it's basically collard greens with bourbon. And as an adult, that's definitely one way to get everyone to eat their greens. It is amazing.
Let me encourage you to eat your vegetables by giving you alcohol. That's great.
I mean, it all burns it off. But
It does.
the unique, sweet, smoky flavor that it gives it is amazing. So, because it is meat-free, you don't miss it whatsoever. Because traditionally, collards are cooked in meat to kind of give it that
The
flavor.
bacon gets that liquid. Because a lot of times people, you don't use the bourbon because if say you have an issue with alcohol in your cooking, cool, that's awesome. You can also use something called liquid smoke, which is a version. It basically gives it smoky flavor. It makes everything taste like bacon.
Like that.
Without actually adding bacon to the recipe. So that's a really fun thing. It's hard to find. It's a little on the pricey side. You can usually find it online.
Or Walmart has it.
Walmart
I
has
get it from Walmart.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that because I don't look for it at Walmart.
Sometimes it's hard to get. Like, normally, no matter how many times we get it, we have to ask somebody where it is because it never seems to be in the same spot. We never
They
find
like to keep you on your toes at Walmart. Yeah, apparently.
But, so I liked that because, you can take your traditional and then add, like, find a way to make an extra twist to it that can really kind of take a tradition, make it your own, and get yourself to eat something healthier, but still something
a little bit. Yes. Look, grown up, exactly. Not for the children. Yeah. I think, what else did you have? The pineapple, and you had your drunken greens, right?
Yeah, that's what my mom makes. We tend to still go over, like, we still do the normally before COVID, where we go to my mom's either early or late, and then go to my mother-in-law's, my husband's mom. So we always
roll
have
yourself
two.
home.
Yes. And I know I made it difficult when I did become a vegetarian / vegan. But my mother-in-law also makes a really good sweet potato casserole. And as I got healthier and had different issues with what I could and couldn't eat, she gradually, like, she would customize it, and it got healthier, it seems like, every year. Still tasty, but she really made the extra effort, and I always appreciated that.
Yeah. It's always cool. And my husband went low carb during COVID because he wanted to lose some weight, and everyone else was, like, gaining their weight, and he was like, I want to lose weight. So he went low carb, and last Thanksgiving, of course, we had to quarantine because I was exposed, so that was fun. But I made, instead of mac and cheese, I did a cheesy cauliflower bake. And that's just like a fun way to make it it's not mac and cheese. Like, don't close your eyes and kid yourself. You're not eating mac and cheese, but it gives you that cheesy flavor that you're craving for mac and cheese. Like I said, do not kid yourself. You will not think you're eating mac and cheese, but you're definitely eating something a little healthier. And it kind of goes to the holiday of that mac and cheese style dish. So yeah, there are definitely ways to adjust for various dietary needs. As you saw with the Hint family, they're gluten-free and vegan just because of the various dietary restrictions they have. And they make it work. They have a spice cake. And what else did they have?
Mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese. No, it was a broccoli. Broccoli
and
cheese.
Oh, broccoli and cheese.
We were talking about
Sorry,
mac and
now
cheese.
I'm
That's
thinking
okay.
about mac and cheese.
I know, right?
I'm hungry.
Oh, that's coming, I promise. So from my side, my dad loves to make creamed spinach. And this isn't necessarily a strictly Thanksgiving thing because he will make it anytime because he loves spinach.
He's like Popeye.
Seriously.
He really is.
It was really bad when he was on blood thinners one time after a surgery because he couldn't have spinach because Coumadin, you can't have dark leafy greens because it messes with the interaction with the blood thinner because it can make it too thin. So, like, he literally got a can of spinach and set it on the counter and waited for the day when he was off of Coumadin so he could eat the spinach. It was like his goal. It was so funny. He's so extra. So he would always make cream spinach, and this cream spinach for him, his like shortcut. This is a really easy one. You get a can of cream and mushroom soup, a block of frozen spinach, and depending on how much you need to make, of course, one block in the freezer section. That's usually 5 ounces.
It's smaller.
It's smaller.
Yeah.
1 can for a block, and then a decent amount of mozzarella cheese. Which, of course, shredded mozzarella cheese, you measure that with your heart. There's no wrong answer for this. So he just dumps it all in a bowl, tops with mozzarella cheese, tosses it in the oven, and broils it just till it's warm and bubbly, and that's cream spinach. And that's what I grew up on.
That actually doesn't sound bad. I'd be willing to try it.
It's not bad at all. You can make it old school. Like, actually, for Thanksgiving this year, I'm planning on making cream spinach from scratch, where I'm using, like, baby spinach that I'm wilting in a pan, and I'm doing a roux sauce. And the roux actually is the first thing I learned how to make. My mom taught me how to make it because a roux is like a bechamel, and it is the base for almost any sauce you ever make, and it's a really great foundation to have. With a bechamel or a roux, it's 2-to-1 is how I learned. It's a ratio because my mom, of course, everything was math. It's 2-to-1, so it's 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour, and 1 cup of milk. Whatever ratio. So if you have 4 tablespoons, if you're making like enough for a small army, say you wanted 4 tablespoons of butter, 4 tablespoons of flour, 2 cups of milk. So it's all about a ratio. She had to work math into, and cooking is a lot of math. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of math.
It's all ratios.
Mm-hmm. Math and chemistry is basically how cooking exists in a way. With a roux, you do a tablespoon of butter, let that melt and get till it starts to get bubbly and foamy. If you want to do brown butter, just let it go a little longer, but there's a very fine line between brown butter and I have to scrape my pan off, so we just stick with the melted butter. 2 tablespoons of flour, and you stir that with a whisk. Use a metal bottom and not a non-stick pan, because if you're using a metal whisk, you want to be able to scrape all the little burnt bits off. And then after the flour has absorbed all the butter, so there's no liquid butter sitting around, you add a cup of milk slowly and stir until it is thickened. You don't want to step away from it. You have to watch it and keep stirring, because if you leave it, it will burn.
So that's why back in the days when you did everything by hand, you're stirring for 5, 10,
5 minutes or so. If you add it slowly, it goes quicker. If you dump all the milk in at once, the entire thing has to heat up and absorb that. Because what's happening is it's actually swelling the starch granules in the flour.
But it was a workout.
You
could eat what you make afterwards.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, traditional cooking was all about the work.
Yeah. Especially when you had to go harvest it yourself. So then after it's called nappe, it's a French term. If you dip a spoon in your bechamel or your roux and you pick it up and you run your finger along the back of the spoon, you should be able to leave a trail that it doesn't close up on itself. So that's how you know when it's nappe or ready to go. As soon as you hit that nappe state, you just add all the cheese you want until it is as cheesy as you like. There's, again, no wrong answer.
Constant tastings?
Oh, yes, of course. Quality control is important. You need to taste it. And then you add the cheese, and then before you do all this, because I learned this the hard way, cook the noodles first. Because once you make that roux sauce, you have very little time before you have to get it into the noodles, or else it's going to get all set up and grainy. And it will not mix in right. Learn from my mistakes, because I've done that before, and it was very sad. Until I realized then I could just eat roux sauce out of the bowl, and it already had cheese in it. So, that wasn't a complete loss, but it wasn't mac and cheese. So you make your noodles, whatever kind you want, cavatappi, spirals, elbow noodles, whatever you want, and then you just dump the cheese in, mix it up. If you want to get really fancy for Thanksgiving, you put it in a casserole dish, spread some breadcrumbs and butter on top, toss it in the broiler and let it get all nice and bubbly. And then you have a mac and cheese that is super delicious and very simple. You can add whatever you like. You can put broccoli in it. You can put bacon in it. You can put different types of cheese besides just cheddar. You can do Gruyere. You can do, not Gruyere. It's the one that's kind of bacony flavored. It's smoky. Gouda. That's the one. You can do Gouda. I liked that because it has a little bit of a smoky flavor without actually adding bacon. You can do spinach. You could do anything you want adding to it. You can put meat in it if you like and make it a whole meal. But that's
lots of veggies.
Lots of veggies. And, you can definitely edit it to your tastes. But that's the basic of it. And I don't know how to make less than enough for a small army because I always use a pound of noodles.
Do you really have that many leftovers after a couple?
No.
Have you ever had to throw away one?
No, I have a teenage son now. He tends to just destroy everything. By destroy, I mean put it in his stomach and eat it.
That's why you cook for a small army. You have a teenager.
That is why I cook for a small... I can't even blame it on my kid because I've done this since I was a teenager.
Oh.
So,
and yet you know how to ration or do the ratios and
yeah, it does make a difference. I still make
it for 2 versus 12.
But I still make it for 12 because leftovers
are the best.
So the last recipe we're going to talk about today, because we are running a little long on this particular podcast, and of course everything's going to be in a link in the description down below. We'll probably make it into a Google sheet or Google document that you can access through a link because we don't have that much space in the description at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we would reach YouTube's maximum.
Yeah, we would definitely. So we're going to do a little Google sheet that you can click on a link and go to. So the next one I'm going to do, the last one we're going to do, is sweet potato biscuits. Now this is a recipe that is actually from a picture I found a long time ago online of a newspaper clipping that was printed, I don't know how long ago, from English's Restaurant. And if you've been around for a while, you probably remember that restaurant. They used to be on 13 in a little dining car. It used to be a little train car that they retrofitted into, or is supposed to look like one, that they retrofitted into a restaurant. They had fried chicken, and they had these amazing sweet potato biscuits that, I ate more biscuits than food. And they always had, honey on the side, and that was what I always remembered when I went there with my grandmother, because that was her favorite place to go. And, of course, this really pairs into, the memories of when you're a child and things that you did with family that kind of, get that sentimentality going, nostalgia. So this is a fairly short recipe. You do 3.5 cups of smashed sweet potatoes, 1 1/4 cups of margarine at room temperature, but you can also substitute vegetable shortening with a teaspoon of salt if you don't have margarine in the house. 2 cups of cake flour, or you can use 4 cups of all-purpose flour. So if you don't have cake flour, they're not going to be quite as light and fluffy because cake flour has less gluten. But that's okay. Either one works. I've made it with all-purpose because I don't have cake flour in the house, and they turn out just fine. A 1¼ cup of all-purpose flour. If you're also using cake flour, you do the 2 cups cake flour and 1¼ cup all-purpose. If you don't have cake flour, you just use 4 cups of all-purpose and stop. You don't add the 1¼ cup to the 4 cups because that's bananas. Well, sweet potatoes, but still. And then also 3 tablespoons of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. You cook the sweet potatoes first, and traditionally you boil them in the hot water, and then, or you can roast them, whichever one you want. Let them cool a little bit, peel them. Please let them cool before you peel them. That is how you lose your fingerprints. And then you refrigerate them until they're cold. When they're cool, you mash them, and then remove the stringy bits, because there's going to be little stringy bits of fiber. Just kind of pull them out as you see them. Then you can combine the sweet potatoes, the sugar, and the margarine or the vegetable shortening in a mixer, and you mix it at low speed until it's pretty combined. You can't see any streaks of margarine or shortening, and you can't see any sugar floating around. Then you add the rest of ingredients slowly and mix well. Then you knead it in a large bowl by hand until it's all like in a dough before you refrigerate it until it is stiff. So you want to get it nice and cold. Then you turn it down to a floured surface and roll it to about 1/4 inch thick. Cut it with biscuit cutter rounds. If you don't have a biscuit cutter, that is cool. You can use a cup. Just be aware that you have to get it out of the cup, so you're going to have to get your finger in there or something.
Can you grease it or flour it or
You can definitely flour it. That'll help make it easier to come off, but I have used cups before to cut out biscuits before I went and got a $1 set of, biscuit cutters, which, good investment, by the way. If nothing else for Play-Doh for the kids, but definitely good investment for cooking as well. Cut them out and then put them on a greased baking sheet, and then you bake for 15 to 18 minutes, depending on your oven, at 350 degrees. Then you serve warm with honey or honey butter, because you can just get some softened butter and mix it with some honey, and that's also amazing. And then you enjoy. Serve warm. They're so good warm. They're good even refrigerated. I mean, you can totally eat them cold. I have a lot. And the thing is, this makes enough, again, if we're going back to for a small army or a restaurant. So you're making sweet potato biscuits and you have a lot, which is not a bad thing. You take them Thanksgiving.
I'm willing to help if
Right.
you want to bring them in the day after Thanksgiving, because we'll probably have to work.
I think I brought them in before.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Yeah.
And that was, I was hinting again for,
you
this
were
year's leftovers.
That was subtle. Okay, cool. So as you can see from the variety of recipes and methods, we've had both vegan, vegetarian, and your go-to standard recipes that you have for Thanksgiving. There's no wrong dish at the table. And maybe you heard one or two you'd like to try out yourself this year. All the recipes, of course, as I said, will be available in a Google document that will be linked to the description of this podcast. Our nation was founded by immigrants and has continued to accept all nationalities, appreciating them for their value, contributions to society. We hope this Thanksgiving that you'll take some time to appreciate how, just like each side dish is seen for its contribution to the whole meal, we all can come together and contribute to make a beautiful table. Thanks for listening. See you next time, guys. Future episodes may feature a variety of topics, ranging from storytelling, arts and crafts, reader's advisory, reference questions, discussion, and more. We also encourage feedback through our Facebook page or in the comments section on the podcast. Visit us online at www.wicomicolibraries.org. Search for Wicomico Libraries on your favorite podcasting site. You can call us at 410-546-5397, or you can email us at center@wicomico.org. That is CENTRE @wicomico.org.